Happy Monday, everybody. Welcome to another episode of China Update, where I provide you with the most up-to-date political, economic, and geostrategic analysis on the world's number 2 economy. My name is Tony. Let's jump in. And sadly, we begin with yet another mass killing incident in China. Just days after a 62-year-old man mowed down almost 100 people in his car, killing 35, over the weekend on Saturday, 8 people were killed and 17 others injured in a stabbing attack on a college campus in the eastern Chinese city of Yixing in wealthy Jiangsu province. The attack took place around 6:30 p.m. at the Wuxi Vocational Institute of Arts and Technology. Those censors have been quick to block videos of the aftermath. Those which have leaked out show several people lying motionless on the ground, some of them surrounded by onlookers as screams are heard in the background. One video shows a young bloody female student crying for her mother. In a statement made on Sunday, police say that a suspect detained at the scene was a recent graduate who was motivated by, quote, failing an exam, not receiving a graduation certificate, and dissatisfaction with internship compensation, end quote. One unconfirmed story going around online claims that he was owed wages by a factory where he had worked 16 hours a day. It could be that he was required to do this manual labor, either unpaid or for very low pay, in order to graduate. This is yet another sign that the deteriorating economic situation in the country is leading to serious social issues, including increased rates of mass violence. Over the last 20 years, Beijing has invested heavily in robust mass surveillance and security personnel, bringing rates of violent crime down. However, it appears that over the last year or two, this rate may now be reversing, despite this security state. Last month, police arrested a 50-year-old man after a stabbing attack near an elementary school in Beijing injured 5 people, including 3 children. A month before that, 3 people were killed and 15 others injured in a knife attack at a suburban supermarket in Shanghai. The same month, September, a bus crashed into a crowd of students and parents outside a school in Shandong province, killing 11 people and injuring 13 others. And these are just the mass murder attacks. The same month, September, a 10-year-old Japanese boy was stabbed to death as he walked to school in Shenzhen in southern China. It's highly likely that he was targeted for being Japanese, just as the 4 instructors affiliated with a US college stabbed in the northeastern Rust Belt city of Jilin in June were targeted for being Westerners. Even senior Chinese officials are not safe. Once again, in September alone, a senior finance official and her 2 male underlings were killed after being thrown from a building in the central province of Hunan. The attack in Zhuhai last week, which resulted in the 35 dead, drew a rare public response from General Secretary Xi Jinping himself, who ordered authorities across the country to learn from the incident to ensure public safety and social stability. In the wake of Xi's remarks, China's Ministry of Public Security held a meeting in Beijing, vowing to guard against, quote, extreme cases, end quote, with utmost vigilance and to help, quote, resolve conflicts and problems at the grassroots level, end quote. Thus, as the economic slowdown deepens and violence continues to emerge, we should expect the state to strengthen its grip on its already thorough security and surveillance presence. Next up, over the weekend, on Saturday, US President Joe Biden and China's General Secretary Xi Jinping met for nearly 2 hours during the APEC summit, marking a pivotal moment in their 15-year diplomatic relationship as President-elect Donald Trump prepares to take office next year. The meeting signaled a shift into a period of uncertainty, but the leaders made progress on key issues, including agreeing to prevent artificial intelligence from controlling nuclear weapons and advancing efforts to secure the release of 2 Americans detained in China, whom the US considers wrongfully detained. Biden also pressed Xi to limit North Korea's support for Russia in its war with Ukraine. The unexpected agreement on AI governance marked a breakthrough in nuclear safety talks, an area where Beijing had previously resisted US efforts. National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan confirmed the commitment to maintaining human control over nuclear weapon decisions, which was echoed in China's official summary of the meeting. The Chinese Foreign Ministry emphasized the importance of dialogue and avoiding a new Cold War, while warning against attempts to contain China. Both leaders publicly highlighted the need for stability in their relationship. Now, of course, as Biden is a lame duck president, we weren't really going to expect much from the meeting, and to be frank, Beijing is likely more focused on the coming Trump administration. Nevertheless, the Biden-Xi meeting also contrasted sharply with their previous encounter at the 2023 APEC summit, which was marred by tensions over the Chinese spy balloon incident. At that time, Biden ended the meeting abruptly and publicly referred to Xi Jinping as a dictator. President-elect Trump's campaign promises and recent cabinet picks signal a tougher stance on China, diverging from Biden's approach of so-called managing competition. Trump plans to implement strict tariffs and has appointed several outspoken critics of Beijing to key positions. The last thing Xi Jinping wants right now is another trade clash with the US. China is already dealing with a severe property crisis and struggling local governments burdened with massive debt. As regular viewers know, Beijing policymakers have responded to the slowing economy by ramping up manufacturing and flooding foreign markets with goods, resulting in a trade backlash around the world. President-elect Trump's trade agenda signals an aggressive stance, with reports indicating he may reappoint Robert Lighthizer, a critic of Chinese trade practices, as his administration's trade chief. Trump has proposed raising all tariffs on Chinese imports to 60%, which could dramatically reduce trade between the two countries. This move would severely impact China's exports to the US, which currently total $430 billion annually. While Beijing has successfully redirected goods to other markets in the past, many countries are now imposing their own trade barriers to protect domestic industries from cheap Chinese imports, leaving fewer options for China to offload excess goods. If Trump follows through on his plans, the impact on China could be much more severe than the earlier trade disputes. Analysts predict that such high tariffs could shrink China's share of US imports from 14% to just 4%. And as we have discussed in previous episodes, anywhere from 2 to 3% of Chinese growth could be shaved off, essentially halving Chinese growth. Xi's reluctance to embrace a consumer-driven growth model further complicates the situation. He has resisted reforms like strengthening the social safety net, which could encourage households to spend more and save less, citing concerns over fostering welfarism. Of course, this will be one of the big stories next year, not just China's economic slowdown and its increased social dysfunction, but also the emergence of a full-blown economic war between the US and China. We'll be following it very closely here on China Update, so if you would like to follow along in what should be a very interesting year next year, don't forget to subscribe. If you're enjoying this episode, also, it's a huge favor if you can hit the like button. It's one click of the mouse, but it tells the algorithm that this is a good channel and it's worth showing to new people. Sharing the episode with someone who you think would enjoy it is also a big help. Patreon and Buy Me a Coffee links are in the description for those who want to go the extra mile and help me keep China Update sustainable. This channel relies primarily on your support to keep going, so this is also a big help. But whatever you do, if you do want to follow along as we move through these very interesting times, as we move into 2025, don't forget to subscribe. Thank you so much. Next up, last week, Ben Thompson of US outlet Stratechery published an excellent interview with Dylan Bartel and Dago Leyland about the current state of semiconductors in the world. It was a wide-ranging interview which included some very thoughtful comments on China. We end today's video by quoting some of the interview. Question: what do you think the understanding and appetite in China? I mean, obviously people know that we need to invest in the basic semi-equipment and not just try to smuggle in Western equipment to be at the leading edge, but there is a question of priorities. And to what extent is this at the highest level of focus that, look, even if we have to go back to the micron level, that's what we need to do in the long run to be fully independent? Do you think that's a sense that is internalized in China, Dylan? Or there's an effort going on, but they maybe don't have the prioritization yet that they need? Patel: I think China fully understands that you do both. You use the Western thing as much as possible, but you also develop your own industry. And they do it in a really cool and somewhat decentralized way. Basically, all of these tool vendors in China are behind. If you were to build a process technology with only Chinese vendors, it's quite a bit behind. But much like a jigsaw puzzle, if I take one piece away from you, you don't know I took one piece away from you, and you'll be able to figure it out. In that sense, this is exactly what China does. Is when they build a fab, they will build a bunch of the foreign tools, and then they'll also build a bunch of their own tools, or buy it from their domestic companies like Anora or AMAC or what have you. And then they'll stick those tools right next to each other and route wafers that are at the same point in manufacturing to different tools. Then they'll say, hey, what's the data here? What's the data there? We're going to replicate it. Oh, okay, here's how we tune our tools. Here's how we improve the tool. Okay, we'll send the new generation of it that works better. Oh, it's still off in these ways. Let's improve it again. So they iterate, while having just one piece of the jigsaw puzzle. Now you do that across every single tool and every single step, and then it ends up being, for many of these tools, because we have the state-of-the-art sitting literally right next to, we've taken apart some of the state-of-the-art, we can catch up in a few years. Then for some of these other tools, it is just really that complicated, and it's going to take 5-10 years. Probably closer to that 5 number actually. Anyways, this is how they're doing it, and they have totally internalized it. The 4th largest tool purchaser in the world today is Huawei. Now obviously the Commerce Department will pretend that Suisure and a few other firms like that are not Huawei. There is probably a ban coming in the next few weeks that will recognize them as Huawei, but they have ignored them as Huawei for the last year basically. And so Huawei has been the 4th largest buyer of tools. And if you count CXMT, then they're actually the 3rd largest buyer of tools. This is ahead of American companies like Micron and Intel in some cases. They're doing this, buying foreign tools, but they're also making a lot of their own tools. Both Huawei affiliated and non-Huawei affiliated companies are building a bunch of their own tools and putting them in these same VAPs, value-added partners. And so this is certainly happening, and this is certainly internalized, and it seems to them to be the utmost priority. I think whether it's the US starting to ban made them wake up to the fact, and before this was just one of the 5 priorities or 10 priorities, and now it's like their utmost priority. But it seems to be semiconductors are more a priority to them than in the West, and the West thinks AI is more of a priority than China does, maybe necessarily, although they both consider both a priority. Here ends the direct quote of the interview and today's episode of China Update. Thank you so much everybody for watching. Have a good and productive week. Have a nice Monday, and I will see you all tomorrow.